Welcome to Visionary Voices Exchange, the podcast that disrupts how we think about blindness and low vision. So join us as we amplify the voices of individuals, families, and professionals living, learning, and thriving with blindness and low vision. We're your hosts, Janet Lebrecq and Carlos Servan. Welcome to Visionary Voices Exchange. I'm Janet Lebrecq, your host, and we are talking science today. And joining me to help me through this conversation is an amazing person, Dr. Mona Samar Minkara. Welcome to Visionary Voices.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm so excited to talk science with you.
Absolutely. And I definitely will need your help because your bio is mind-blowing. So I'm going to just start by asking you a couple of questions. So first of all, you're a professor, assistant professor at Northeastern University, and your bio also just outlines some incredible accomplishments. You've been the recipient of multiple awards in science from the National Science Foundation as well as from the National Institute for Health. And these are just incredible acknowledgments, both of your credentials, but also your career and work experience. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's start by having you explain to our listeners, first of all, what is a bioengineer and what does a bioengineer do?
Okay, these are really big questions. So anything that involves engineering and biology can make a bioengineer. So as you can imagine, that's a huge area. Some people like refine it and they'll have a smaller section of it where they have biomedical engineers. So then you refine it to like anything related to medicine, like that type of biology. But I'm in the bioengineering department, so we literally can cover everything from engineering medical devices to what I do, which is understanding what's happening on the molecular scale in our lungs, to, I don't know, looking at bacteria out in nature. Like it's a huge field.
Yeah, very broad. Yeah. And I should also mention that you are also blind. And when we think about the STEM industry and the science field itself, it's not all that common, unfortunately, for individuals who may be blind or low vision to really be employed in this type of field or to get through the educational process to be able to pursue a career in this industry. I think younger people, today that are certainly more mainstreamed, we're seeing more of this, but not enough representation. And so wanted to just get your thoughts on how did you get interested in science?
I mean, you're absolutely true about representation. How did I get interested in science? I would say that was something very deeply, innate to me. But it really did start when I was a kid, and I would watch Magic School Bus and Bill Nye the Science Guy, and I was just blown away as a child about the world that you got to explore with Miss Frizzle in Magic School Bus.
I remember that show being on television as well, and so what a way to spark interest. It
was amazing. Literally, I think it was the first time ever I heard funding in part by the National Science Foundation, right? So I just remember as a kid hearing that and be like, what is that, And now I'm so happy to say that I have funding from the National Science Foundation to do science.
That is incredible. And where do you think the interest in terms of this particular industry, where you began, where you are today, and where do you think the issue of technology in general, especially assistive technology, the role that it plays for people to be able to actually consider being in these career areas? Because we don't often think that individuals who are blind or visually impaired or low vision, have the ability due to the lack of the technology solutions. And certainly they weren't there when I was growing up and going to public school. I actually got a waiver out of the science classes, which irritates me to no end these days because
Yeah.
the technology was not there. So if the technology wasn't there, the opportunity wasn't there.
I think it's more than just technology. Yes, technology has improved a lot. I can even say like within my lifetime, like when I was a kid versus what's available now is tremendously different, right? Like I went to school when we were still using like Discman and Walkmans, right? To
Yeah.
listen to music, like little cassettes. I would listen to audiobooks on cassette, and now it's like all just digital and audio file, like it's just all on like your smartphone, like so accessible, right?
Mhm.
Even the advent of AI has really kind of made things a lot easier. um but I would push back a little bit and say that it's also a state of mind of society, right?
Mhm.
Like maybe back when you were younger, like it was just like okay for blind people not to do science because literally people thought like what would a blind person ever need the science for,
Sure.
and like would a blind person ever be able to really contribute to science? And I would say that still that mentality still exists, but it's decreased a little bit, which is great. So there's been some progress. And now there's also, because of that, because there's more blind people who are trying to do science, um there's more technologies that have emerged, like talking equipment or 3D printing. Like all of that is just really helping.
Well, in order to be in the science field, also you had to go through those very hard classes like chemistry. Talk about what that was like when you were a student going through these classes like chemistry. Did you have additional supports? How were you able to leverage both your interest but also your ability to adapt to being in these kinds of courses? What was that like for you?
I mean, it was hard. I mean, I think in chemistry, I didn't even get to really fully take it until the last year of high school.
Hmm.
And then like even in college, even though I'm a chemistry major from undergrad because I got my degree, like I never really did experiments myself. Like I mean I had like assistants, but sometimes I just wouldn't even do fully the lab work, which wasn't the best thing. I ended up becoming a computational chemist, and now like there's a lot more students that are blind that are actually getting to do the experiments because they can have people who help them, and then the proper equipment, the proper technology, like probes that speak. Um, and that's one of the projects I'm working on with a collaborator down at Baylor University. Is he's literally bringing like blind high school students to his lab, and having them do experiments themselves,
Hmm.
which is amazing. Like I didn't have that even myself when I was growing up.
Yeah, it just shows you the advances, that we've made also. But I think it also speaks to the whole discussion of inclusion and sort of changing the attitudes about, who can do what. And really, when you think about it, all it takes is a little bit of imagination and innovation to be able
Oh yeah.
to change that paradigm that we are excluding people who very well might be able to do it just as well, if not better. And just having that open mind and that attitude, to be inclusive makes a huge difference.
Totally agree. And then just also coming at it with the mentality that there is a solution, right? So
Mhm.
if you have a teacher that just genuinely doesn't believe a blind person should learn, or there's no way, then they're not going to be that teacher's not going to be able to teach the blind student science, right? But if you have a teacher who's like, I don't know how to, but let's try to figure this out, like that's the right attitude to get for the blind student to even have an experience.
Yeah, you're so right. And I think that going through school, all of us, who've run into teachers who really have those high expectations and the can do, mentality, just as you said, even if they don't understand how it can work, but they're willing to have that open mind and provide that opportunity and explore potential solutions to different ways that someone can be taught and different ways that, people can learn. And when you think about it, whether you're blind or not, there are certain ways that people benefit from being taught, whether you're talking about math or any other subject, that people have a difference in the best strategy for themselves in terms of what makes them learn, what makes them pick up that information, what makes them have the ability to synthesize the information and get something out of it. We're all very much individualized, and to put people in this sort of, round hole, that everybody's going to learn the same way and understand it, it can be very challenging, and it does tend to discourage people.
Exactly, yes.
You're also recognized as a leader in accessible STEM. Let's talk about that for a few minutes, because this conversation really evolves around the ability for individuals who are blind or low vision to think about things that they can engage in, opportunities that are out there. So how do you look at this particular topic, and with regard to accessible STEM, what made you think about this? Obviously your own experience, but you do something about it.
Yeah, basically, like, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a scientist. I need to practice my science, but there are certain things I need, and so I have to figure out solutions for it. And I think it doesn't. It's not just there. It's the fact that I try to find solutions, but then I realize, like, let's make it easier for others, right? And so sharing it. And so I think the fact that I've created an online repository called the Blind Scientist Tools, where I've highlighted all the tools I've ever used as a blind scientist, really helps. I'm also the director of the Academy of Blind Scientists, and we just get together and we share resources and try to build a community. I mean, I think all of that plays a role, but step by step, like, if I face a new issue of how to confront, like, in my work, I have to figure out a solution.
Sure. And by having that support system there to talk to other scientists who are blind, that really does create that opportunity to cross-collaborate, but also to share those resources that others may not have known was even available.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
And moving forward in your own career path, where do you see current barriers now? Are there still barriers that need to be removed for individuals?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of times we've like tried to break down barriers for the student, learning. But then, like, we never really thought about what happens when the student actually, like, now reaches the workforce, right? Is now grown up, and the student needs to either teach, which also, like, a lot of people don't even think of, like, their teacher having a disability or being blind, or somebody in the workforce having a disability. I think there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that realm. Like, it's not just enough to break down the barriers for whoever's learning, but like, getting a job, having the job environment accessible, providing what the person needs in the job, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And even thinking about how to connect others, to people who are already in their careers, like yourself, having that access and providing that mentorship for
sure, yeah.
those individuals is helpful too.
I dedicate, like, anybody listening, like, you can try to connect with me on Minkara.com. I do dedicate, like, Friday afternoons to meeting with people who just have those questions and want to connect with me. So I try to do a couple sessions every Friday, but, like, I think society still hasn't been able to wrap their heads around the fact that, somebody who's blind could be an actually active scientist who's working, not just learning.
Sure. Well, and I think that that's true in, a range of settings. Also, when you think about careers and you think about, having the opportunities. I've been a vocational rehabilitation counselor and certainly agency leadership roles, and I still see the barriers that are out there. So you're absolutely correct. When you think about, it's one thing to get through the training. That's the hard part. Then the difficult challenge beyond that becomes, okay, I've succeeded in that particular part of my goals, but now comes the doors that need to be opened to provide that opportunity for people to become employed in those respective fields. But you see that not just even in careers. So we see it in the travel industry. And I noticed that in your bio, you have a platform called Planes, Trains, and Canes. And it is a travel. Is it just a blog, or is it just
It's a series, like a video, like a series of episodes, like small. Yeah, it's a series, a TV series.
So talk about that. So what are people going to see, and why did you actually take that on as one of your endeavors?
Well, I'm a very curious person, so it's like the inner scientist comes out, and I was like, I want to learn more about the world. So that's kind of how that started. And then I knew that I didn't have funding to travel, so could I get backed by, get funding? And it turns out there was something called the James Holman Prize Award, and from the Lighthouse of San Francisco, and it gives 25,000 to a blind person with like an ambitious idea. And I realized that like in order for me to travel the world, I have to show how it would be like to travel and maybe document it for others. And so for season 1, you get to see me using public transportation in 5 different cities around the world. And like I travel on my own. There is a camera woman who follows me with a camera, but from a distance. Like I don't talk to her. She doesn't intervene. Like it's kind of intense and very thrilling. Like it's a very like let's see what happens and just like letting it all out. And so I get into shenanigans. You can see what happens for season 1. And then season 2, I really try to explore the question of what does it mean to travel blind? Like a lot of people will be like, what's the point of you traveling? You can't see anything. Well, I have 4 other senses. And so I do a variety of things in season 2, from going to a village in the Andes in Peru where 70% of people are blind, and getting there and talking to people there, but also going scuba diving in the Philippines, which was a massively amazing experience too.
Wow, you are definitely adventurous for sure. How can people watch the series?
It's on YouTube. It's publicly, freely available to anybody. Just go to YouTube and type Planes, Trains, and Canes, because I use a plane and a train and my handy cane.
And how are you received in some of these adventures that you go on?
A variety of reactions, like from extreme friendliness and people wanting to help to like, how dare you try to do this on your own? You're harming yourself and others. How selfish of you. I'm not kidding. To indifference, like the whole spectrum.
That is a range, absolutely, but certainly it does not discourage you. So I definitely want to encourage people to go to that site as well and access it. I think that it can be very helpful. And interestingly enough, I think that the attitudes that you encounter on some of those journeys that you are experiencing are equally important for right here. You don't have to go to another country to experience those kinds of either very supportive attitudes or the ones that can be extremely discouraging and can play a real critical role in how people see themselves or what they feel about, their own level of dependence or independence. And so I think that this is a great strategy for helping people to navigate some of the experiences that you have had also.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So what's next? What are you up to next? You've got your plate full.
Yeah, I mean, next is continuing with my science and my research, and I love it, growing my lab, and I hope to see if I can get funding for another season of Planes, Trains, and Gains. So stay tuned, as I would say.
Absolutely. And what advice would you give somebody who's thinking about, they're matriculating into college from high school and they may be thinking about this field? What words of encouragement would you share with them if they're really thinking about this, but they may have some apprehension about whether or not they can be successful?
First, I would say make sure you're following your passion. Like that's important. Like follow your dream. And then I would say yes, it is scary. It's totally scary, but don't worry. Like if you just take it one tiny step at a time. I have a really clear memory of moving down to Florida to go to get my PhD at the University of Florida, and literally first day I was there, or second day, I went out and I couldn't find my way back. It took me an hour to figure out how to get back to my house because I couldn't see. And then I remember thinking, how am I gonna write a 200-page thesis? First day, I didn't even start yet. So I remember thinking to myself, you know what, I'm gonna calm down. First figure out how to get to the school. And I just really followed that mentality, like just one step at a time.
I think that is great advice, because I do think that sometimes, as individuals who are blind, we tend to kind of get ourselves in that mindset where we're trying to figure out everything. And we're always sort of in that mindset anyway, because we always have to be thinking about solutions or new strategies. And I think that sometimes what the world of work really is not benefiting from is how both resilient and innovative we have to be as individuals who are blind, because we are constantly in that mode, to be thinking about solving problems. How am I going to get to work? How am I going to learn my cane travel skills?
Yes.
And modifying some of the techniques. Not everybody has to use, the same techniques. So I think that is incredibly very, very good advice for people to not think so far ahead, one step at a time, one day at a time, and you will get there. So I think that is really good advice.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you for joining us today. It was fascinating just hearing about your journey. I congratulate you and commend you for the successes that you've achieved. And I think that you are definitely going to be an inspiration to others who may be thinking about this particular industry, and certainly college, pursuit. Even if they don't decide to go to college for engineering or for science, it's thinking about the reality that they have that opportunity to do something, and that blindness isn't the thing that should define any one of us.
Yeah, I agree.
So
thank you for having me. Thank you for having me today.
You're very welcome. And, best of luck to you with your future endeavors. And I'm going to check out your program also.
Oh, yeah. Please let me know when you get a chance what you think.
Thank you so much for joining us. And this is Janet Lebrecht from Visionary Voices Exchange.